Well, thank you very much, both of you, for genuinely illuminating talks. I'm going to call for questions now, but I really don't think that there can be any. The summaries have been so succinct. However, just in case there is anybody who would like to ask something, please make it only a question, no statements. Identify yourself and speak very briefly.
Thank you, Barney. My name is Meredith Doig. I'm president of the Rationalist Society. As a person who does not follow a faith, I have a question about the experience of the West going through the Enlightenment and the rise of human rights, and how that over time contributed to a reduction of violence. Is that a factor in this situation? Can you see that it might be a factor in the future?
To an extent there is. What we're seeing in the Muslim world in a broader sense, not just Syria and Iraq, is that we've entered into post-colonization era. A lot of 19th century, 20th century was mainly marked by colonization of the Muslim world and the post-colonization Cold War era, and most of the Muslim movements, political or religious, were revivalist movements, independence movements, and they were trying to struggle against some world power, whether that's peacefully or not. It was always against someone else, outsiders, foreigners. Now, for the first time, I feel that in many Muslim countries since Arab Spring, the struggle is within the Muslim societies, so Muslims against Muslims. So we're going to see, I feel that we will see even an escalation of these things. It's happening everywhere, in Libya, Tunisia. Tunisia is not bad, but we don't know. Certainly Egypt, Turkey even has entered into, the government is cracking down on other Muslim groups in a very authoritarian way. So I think that this will be the hallmark of this decade, maybe longer, I don't know. But I think one thing is that we may go through the same cycles that Europe went through in the Muslim world, but I feel that it's going to be quicker. It won't have to be centuries, probably decades.
Just very briefly, a couple of comments. One of the things which is not obvious about Islamic State is that it's a very materialist, very political movement. Political versus the state, but it's absolutely obsessed with state power. Islamism, political Islamist movements tend to be obsessed with state power. So although the language is religious, it's out of keeping with 14 centuries of tradition. It's focus on power in the here and now, and this is true when you look at a group like Hizb ut-Tahrir, which is non-violent, through to the most extreme kind of violent groups. The other thing is that it's borrowing the concept of revolutionary change, which it certainly borrowed in the mid-20th century from revolutionary Marxism. And revolutionary Marxism, of course, is in its various forms is alive and well. So a third of the districts in India are facing essentially Maoist insurgencies, Naxalite insurgencies. Mehmet mentioned Robert Pape's work, and of course the Liberation Tigers Tamil Eelam, or the PKK. The inspiration of Maoist or Marxist ideas is still alive and well. So eliminating religion, unfortunately, doesn't make those problems go away. It's something about our human makeup, I fear.
You got a microphone there. Excellent.
Hi, my name's Susan Durgan. I'm from Australians for Reconciliation in Syria. I'd like to ask, and Barney, you wrote an article about us last year when some church leaders, Malcolm Fraser, signed a statement. Greg, I'd like to ask you a question, and also Mehmet. It's in regard to Western media. I was in Syria. I lived in Syria for a couple of years teaching at the British Council, and I returned in April 2011, and again last year with a peace delegation. One thing that's really disturbed me is the Western media presentation of what's going on in Syria. From the very beginning, it's had a sectarian slant on things. There were calls for Christians to go to Beirut, Eloise, to their graves from the very beginning, and people were getting killed by armed groups from the beginning. Very, very hard to get the Western media to report on this. There are gatekeepers that don't allow us to get these things into the media. One of the atrocities that has enraged people, atrocities have happened in Syria, but who's been responsible for them? The investigations haven't been there in the Western media. One of them was the chemical attack, the alleged chemical attack in Ghouta in August 2013, just outside Damascus. And there has been a lot written about that, a lot of claims. Kerry said that over 1,400 people were killed, but there have been veteran reporters such as Simon Hirsch and MIT physicists such as Ted Poulter have claimed and investigated that it wasn't the government, it was most likely rebels. Why hasn't this got into the media? And I don't think the young people attracted to ISIS are living in a bubble. I think they're responding also to the media reporting. Who's going to do something about that?
It's a big question. I think, just by way of context to get at the underlying issue behind your question, if I understand it correctly, if we could change history, surely, as I mentioned, invading Iraq was a mistake. The way it was done was a mistake. The Arab Spring has borne very bitter fruits, no more so than in Syria. And it would have been better not to have what's happened in Syria. 200,000 plus lives lost, immense suffering, there's no question. The problem is there's no easy way out now. Whatever it is that the Assad regime has done or not done, and it's true that before this violence broke out, before the civil war, there was a peace and a stability which was largely beneficial to most people. It was a police state, but it was largely beneficial. There is enough evidence about the Assad regime's atrocities that I don't think there's any going back to rehabilitating it. The short term probably is a compromise, a realpolitik compromise, allowing Assad to remain in Damascus. But whatever way forward, it's not to. I mean, it could be the case that we didn't have what's happened this last 3.5 years, but there's no going back to what it was. As for media reporting, look, I share your concerns, but there's no easy fix to this except to try as well as best we can to craft strong narrative, get into the press, and if that can be done, then it can balance things out. Some people do that, but I don't know. Barney, you might have some thoughts on the media.
I do, but
just something comes to mind. Maybe it's not going to address your question. But one of the things that people don't know is that in Sunni tradition, there's a very strong teaching of theology of obedience to state. This has even entered in creed books because there has been instances in the early history of Islam, civil strife, civil war causing a lot of damage to civilians. The theologians thought that it was better to be patient, a lifetime of a tyrannical dictator than to rebel against him because it could lead to a lot of innocent people dying. So really ISIS or others are breaking away from this tradition. And even some mainstream Sunni Muslims are really breaking. These are very historically significant or religiously significant issues, and I'm now reading a book by Khalid Abou al-Fadl. It's called Rebellion and Violence, in Islamic law. And I just want to understand that a little bit more. I think that's at the core of the issue as well.
Yeah, I would like to say just one or two things about that. When I speak to Muslim groups, I get the impression, not surprisingly, that they feel stereotyped. And the reason is that they are stereotyped. That is something the media has to do. Ask Catholics how they feel, or the Liberal Party how they feel about the ABC. It's in the nature of media that we can only do things briefly and without a lot of nuance. As to gatekeepers, I can only speak for my paper. There was no gatekeeper preventing any point of view about Syria. It was just very hard to find out the facts, and it was very dangerous, as you know, for journalists to be there. But I don't want to take up any more time with my views. David, if the microphone come to you.
Thank you, Barney. My name's David Zwartz. I'm from the Catholic Archdiocese. Thus far, we've heard nothing about the Christians in Iraq and the situation of the Christians there. We had an evening just last Wednesday night, very successful. Professor Nasir Boutros, a Chaldean Catholic, native of Mosul, spoke about the situation from his experience. We had 80 mainly Catholics, some Jews, Muslims, other Anglicans, etc., turning up. A lot of people very interested. I get several calls every week asking, about this issue. So what can we say about the impact, especially on Christian-Muslim relations here in Australia, of the situation in Iraq and how we should handle it?
It's part of the problem. I don't think anyone's safe in that area, whether Christian or other. Muslims are in a worse situation. These people that I met from the Free Syrian opposition to Assad, they said that, I asked the same question, how is the Christians are being treated by this ISIS? They said that they treat Christians better than Muslims, interestingly. As long as they accept to pay the poll tax, the jizya tax, they guarantee their protection. Obviously, I'm not saying that's a good way to live as a Christian minority, but they are pretty bad to everybody, and it looks like they're treating Muslims the worst, because that's where the opposition to their rule will come from. So they will have to keep dissidents down and really put a lot of pressure.
Yeah, that's another whole big topic in itself, deserves its own discussion. There's a long trajectory of the Middle East and the cities of the Middle East going from being very vibrant, plural cities to attempts to have a stronger, more monocultural environment. And it's a very sad story. It's been speeded up with Islamic State. Islamic State represents a modern approach to understanding Islam, which is at odds with the historical patterns of the region. And the historical patterns of the region were these were cities of pluralism, and that was part of the tradition. And we're dealing with a horrible fundamentalist phenomenon that's completely against that. So even before this trouble started in Iraq, most of the Christian population had fled, and I think the end of it will be very few Christians left. Christians had a reasonable situation in Syria when things were stable. Now it's a miserable situation, but it's just another element of the misery in the whole region.
Well, on that note, I'm very sorry we have to miserably end. Thank you very much to our keynote speakers for coming in. I would like to ask Justice David Harper from the Supreme Court of Victoria to present our gift of thanks to Professor Greg Barton on behalf of the AIS.
It's coming.
Thank you. And now I would like to ask Dennis Fitzgerald, Executive Director of the Catholic Social Services in Victoria, to present our gift of thanks to Associate Professor Mehmet Ozalp on behalf of the Australian Intercultural Society. Finally, the Australian Intercultural Society relies on local businesses and individuals to fund our many programs and events. These sponsors deserve our most sincere thanks, because without their support, it would not be easy for the AIS to bring all of you together like this. Today's sponsor is Sur Cleaning Products. I would like to call on Greg Barton and Mehmet Ozalp to present our first sponsor with a certificate of appreciation. Accepting on behalf of Sur is Mr. Salih Yigit. Well, thank you very much, everybody. And now, finally, I would like to call on Ahmet Polat, Executive Director of the AIS, to conclude the program.
Thank you, Bernadette. Thank you, Barney, my dear uncle. I'm Mehmet Polat, Executive Director of Australian Intercultural Society. I thank you all for coming, and we have a lot of great people here today. The topic covered today is important for us all. At AIS, we would like to open a platform where we can all get together to discuss common issues. Hence, we organize these and similar events in order to build understanding and cooperation through interaction. Each of our events is an opportunity to build bridges, hear from a range of new voices, and ultimately share the new Australia. I would like to thank Professor Greg Barton and Professor Mehmet Ozalp for coming here to share their insights on this topic. I would also like to thank our sponsor, Sir Cleaning Products, for their financial support, Mr. Salih Heat. I want to thank Barney Zwartz, my uncle, for facilitating the program today. It was excellent. Thank you. He's a valuable person to Melbourne and to AIS. I would like to show my thanks with a gift. To give the gift, I would like to call on the managing partner of Novik Carbon Lawyers, Tony Carbon. Yes, my new uncle is on the way.
She's coming around the corner.
That wasn't on my script.
Okay, before finishing the program, let me announce some of the AI's upcoming events. Firstly, we have the Anatolian Culture and Art Festival on 6th December taking place in Docklands. And I'm aware that we have been sending a lot of emails to your attention. As far as I see that this is one of them, left 3 events at the end of this year. Next, there will be the first feature-length movie about Turkish Muslim scholar Fethullah Gülen and the Hizmet movement by Terry Spencer Hesse to show what people are able to do with the power of love. The screening of this documentary will take place at the Palace Cinema, Como, on 9 December. We will conclude this year with the annual Whirling Dervishes Shebe program on 17 December, which will take place in Springvale. We welcome all of you to all these programs with your partner, friends and colleagues, sisters, nephews, uncles, aunties, go on. Finally, study tours to Turkey, such as the Anzac Spirit Tour and Timeless City will continue in 2015. I think around 10 different events will waiting for you. If you would be interested in attending, please send me an email. I'm gonna call you, I'm gonna visit you at your home, at your office, at your shop, whatever. Okay? You can find more details about these and other events on our website. Thank you for coming to our program this morning. Please help yourself to the refreshments. I hope to see you again soon. Thank you.